Good evening, everyone. Today, actually, we assembled here for final revision before your final examination. So, we are revising today chapter number 17 of grade 11, that is the breathing and exchange of gases. So, we have to understand the concept of respiration and breathing and exchange of gases. When I taught you about chapter number 14, I told you the difference between breathing and respiration. So respiration, which means by cellular respiration, is a chemical process and the end product of which is ATP, and it is done just and just to produce energy. But as we are aerobic organism, we require supply of oxygen for production of energy because food is getting oxidized to produce energy. So how this oxygen will be supplied to each and every cell? How this oxygen will be taken out from environment and supplied to the cell? How the carbon dioxide produced by each and every cell will be returning back to carbon dioxide? Actually, two systems are participating in this. One is the system we are going to learn in this chapter, that is the respiratory system. But we should not deny the role of second system, that is called circulatory system. So both are having their own role. What is done by respiratory system? Respiratory system is responsible for exchange of gases. So the gases present in the atmosphere are coming inside of our body or getting outside our body by this respiratory system. But these gases transported to each and every part of our body via circulatory system. So 17th chapter we will learn about the respiratory system, and in 18th chapter we will know about the respiratory system. But let me tell you, for proper type of respiration, we all require both the systems. We cannot go with only respiratory system. So why do you think is respiration required? Why we need to respire? Guys?
Ma'am, for generation of ATP.
And where we are going to use those ATP?
Ma'am, in our daily activities.
Yes. So you must be knowing that ये तो हम सभी जानते हैं. If we close our mouth and nose for fraction of seconds, you will feel why we require oxygen. We will feel choking, or we will have the sensation of strangulation. And let me tell you, the organ which is damaged faster is the brain. You know, many a times during the birth of a child, it is mandatory for a child that when once it is coming out of mother's womb, it has to make a crying sound, because that cry is allowing the oxygen to enter into the lungs. Because isse pehle it was dependent on mother for everything. Now it's going to work independently. So many times, if the child is not responding properly, usko ulta latka ke piche mara jata hai so that it can start breathing. If it is not done, then can grade 11, 12 students tell me that what happens with the child? We talked about it. We call them with a specific name.
Ma'am, blue baby.
Huh? Blue baby. Very good. Blue baby or cyanosis, because they turn blue in color due to absence of oxygen. And the part which is mostly affected is the brain. So our brain will be damaged And that's why we need to go for inspiration and expiration. That means we should inhale and we should exhale. Okay. So what is the respiratory surface? Because like respiratory surface is something which is very important in terms of respiration.
Alveolar surface.
So you know that the lungs is full of small balloon-like structures, alveoli. Lung could have been the whole lung. वो पूरा एक balloon like structure बन सकता था, but it has to be divisions and formation of multiple small structure. Consider a lung can be like this, but it's not like this, because in that case it will have surface area which is small. But if lung is like this and then there are full of alveoli, so you can see there will be thousands or millions of alveoli. So there will be increase in the surface area. Okay, so that is what is respiratory surface, which should be always maintained, and we require a specific amount of respiratory surface for proper function. What do you think is the respiratory medium?
Blood.
Blood.
No. Respiratory medium is the like the place from which we take oxygen. So
Atmosphere.
yes, for us it can be atmosphere, but it's not only atmosphere. We have to remember the names of the cases of aquatic animals, so it can be water also, isn't it? Some animals or
Yes,
plants take oxygen from water. Okay, so what is the main challenge and why, if you see the evolution or classification of animals, you will be astonished to see one thing, that lower organisms do not require a very complicated respiratory system, and then they they live happily ever after even without a complicated respiratory system. But we, like organisms, multicellular, complex ones, require a well-developed respiratory system. So what is the reason why we require a well-developed respiratory system?
Aquatic
due to
animals have the dissolved oxygen in water.
Hmm. No, no, I'm not talking about aquatic animal. I'm talking about simple and complex animals. Yes, Ayushi.
ma'am, due to their body complexity is low, so by the means of simple diffusion they can take this gases, but our body is so complex that by this simple mean we cannot absorb.
So I just wish to draw a diagram to explain this to you. Consider this is a cell and O2 is present everywhere. Okay. So O2 can enter into cells from any side, no problem. Okay. Now, if I have a group of cells, small group of cells, okay, and O2 is present everywhere, so O2 can directly enter into the cells which are present at the surface directly, and it will have some trouble, but still it can manage to go into the inside cell. Now in our human body, the part which is like, consider this is a, or I will try to draw a better diagram. So in our body, how much, what is the volume of cell that is in exposure with the environment, beta? It will be too less, isn't it? What about the
Yes,
rest
ma'am.
of the cells? How they will manage? Consider only the blue area is at the exposure. What about this pink area? What about these cells? How they will manage? They have to manage by somehow, no? Oxygen must reach there. So that is why they require respiratory system, and which should be well developed so that by low amount of time it can reach to each and every part. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
So actually, diffusion is an efficient method. It is proved to be an efficient method for lower organisms. Why? Because if you are relying on diffusion, it can like distribute the substance for short distance about 0.5 millimeter only. But if you are relying on it for transfer of something distance more than 0.5, you have to wait for a very long time. And we don't have that much time. That's why we actually go for respiratory system. Okay, now we will talk about the types of respiration. And in types, I wish to talk about the different phases of respiration. So what are the types of respiration, beta? Class?
Ma'am, via gills, lungs, skin.
Not that. That is types of respiratory
Aerobic
system.
and anaerobic.
Aerobic and anaerobic. Now, if I'm talking about aerobic respiration, sorry. This can be further subdivided into direct and indirect respiration. So what do we mean by direct and indirect? So direct respiration means directly the organs or cells are in contact with the respiratory medium, and there is no presence of, like what I can say, respiratory system. And indirect means the oxygen is reaching to the part via means of respiratory system. Kindly note down the definitions. So I wish to mention here about a few specialized respiration. One is cutaneous respiration. So who is going to tell me it is present in case of whom?
Ma'am, in frog.
Ma'am, in frog. What they do?
Ma'am, they respire via their skin.
So skins are full of blood vessels, which can be having very thin wall, and that's why the gaseous exchange can be done through moist skin. Okay. Next type of specialized respiration is known as buccopharyngeal. So what is this? Astonishingly, it is also observed in case of frogs or toads. What they do? Their buccopharyngeal cavity, matlab the cavity which is including buccal cavity as well as pharyngeal cavity, that part is also full of what? Blood vessels. And that can also go for like exchange of gases. Third type is called branchial respiration. So any guess about this branchial respiration?
Human
Fish.
respiration.
Fish.
So
It
in human it is not there, beta. Branchial respiration is observed in case of aquatic animals. It is by gills. So what is special about gills? How gills actually respire?
Ma'am, they are the flap near the mouth which directly takes the oxygen in the dissolved form from water.
Yes. So always remember that the rate of respiration is quite more than the, or rate of breathing rather to say, is quite more in case of aquatic animals. Why? Because the amount of dissolved oxygen is less in water. So animals have to breathe faster to maximize the loss of oxygen. Okay. So sorry, to minimize the loss of oxygen and maximize the amount of oxygen getting inside it. Now, the human respiration is known as pulmonary respiration. Understood? So we breathe via lungs. So remember, आप सोचो एक फ्रॉग के लाइफ में चारों चार रहता है. कैन यू इमेजिन? वो ब्रैकियल रेस्पिरेशन कब करता होगा?
During tadpole stage.
वेरी गुड.
मैम जब पानी में होता होगा.
So it can go for brachial, it can go for pulmonary when it is adult frog, and it can go for cutaneous and buccopharyngeal also. Okay, so respiration can be like the indirect respiration. I am talking about this one, indirect respiration. It can be further subdivided into two phases, that is external respiration and internal respiration. So what is the difference between like external and internal? We will see here. So in case of indirect respiration, as I mentioned, that it can have external respiration, which is the type A. In this case, intake of oxygen by blood from water. So O2 is taken from water by blood. मतलब ब्लड वेसल्स में ही डायरेक्ट वो ऑक्सीजन आता है और ब्लड वेसल से ही वो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड डायरेक्टली रिलीज होती है, बट इट्स नॉट सेम एंड दैट सिंपल इन केस ऑफ internal respiration. In this case, there will be various steps. First step will be uptake of O2, that where we are we are taking oxygen, okay, and uptake of O2 and supply to cells. उसके बाद there will be oxidation of food to produce energy. Third step will be there where there will be storage of energy, that is formation of ATP. And in fourth step, CO2 released by cell removed. So you can understand why it is called external and internal, because in case of external, the blood is available directly at the surface. So whatever is happening, the gaseous exchange, it is directly faced by blood. Whereas in internal, air has to be inhaled and then it will go to the go inside, and then it will come in contact with the blood vessel where exchange will take place. Understood? So which one do you think is better, external or internal?
Internal.
Why?
Ma'am, because in external the blood is in direct contact with atmosphere, so there may be chances of infection or
Blood is never direct contact with the atmosphere. It will be inside the blood vessel बेटा. तब तो मतलब frog घूमता फिरता तो उसकी बॉडी में से खून निकलता रहता बेटा. But as blood vessels are present on the surface, even by slight injury, a person can get, or an animal can get damaged. Okay. Whereas in our case, blood vessels are not that exposed; they are present inside, and oxygen and CO2 is like reaching to the blood vessels and coming out via respiratory system. Understood? But then,
Ma'am.
if you are staying in an aquatic system where water is there, the external respiration is possible. But in air, we cannot afford to have external respiration. That is why these two modes of respiration are specially formed for these two different types of animals. Yes, beta.
मैम तो ये कैसे कह सकते हैं कि हमारे में इंटरनल ब्लड वेसल होगी, क्योंकि अगर बॉडी में कहीं भी थोड़ा सा भी कट हो तो भी ब्लड तो डायरेक्ट बाहर आ ही जाता है ना.
बट उसको स्किन के नीचे रहता है ना बेटा. यू हैव टू रप्चर द स्किन. And those blood vessels are not directly diffused, causing diffusion of gases, isn't it? They are not capillaries that
Yes,
way.
ma'am.
So that's why we are saying blood vessels can be there anywhere. So now I will talk about anaerobic respiration. As you know, we discussed this in chapter number 14, that anaerobic respiration can be done via fermentation, but in absence of oxygen, although energy is extracted, but it is not that much, and that's why anaerobes produce less like energy by oxidation of food substance. Okay. So I just want to ask you a question, that respiration release energy. There is another process which is called combustion. In this case, that is also releasing energy. So what is the difference between respiration and combustion?
Ma'am, respiration is a biological process, whereas combustion is a chemical or physical process that takes place outside the body.
Combustion is never physical process, it is a chemical process. Okay. Second difference.
Ma'am, for combustion we required fire, or fire is generated in the form of heat.
That means light energy and heat energy both are generated, isn't it? You should
Respiration is
never say
breakdown
that
of
for
glucose.
combustion we require fire. That is you, matlab after studying in grade 11, studying thermodynamics chapter, you should know, and as we studied glycolysis and everything, initially in combustion you have to give some energy to derive energy. In case of glycolysis also, a few molecules of ATP is used, then only ATP production starts. Isn't it better?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
So we can say that enzymes are not involved in combustion because it's not a biological process, and ATP is not produced. Whereas in case of respiration, both of these things are occurring. The most important thing which is making respiration better than combustion is, whenever I am burning a piece of coal, I cannot control it. Once the fire is there, it is very difficult to control. It will get combust as per the process. मैं ऐसा नहीं कर सकती हूँ कि उसकी एनर्जी रिलीज को कंट्रोल करूं. हाँ, ये मैं कर सकती हूँ कि उसको ऑक्सीजन सप्लाई कट कर दूं या फिर पानी डाल दूं तो इट विल स्टॉप बर्निंग, बट आई कैन नॉट कंट्रोल द रेट ऑफ कंबशन. कैन आई? I cannot. But in respiration, every step is controlled by enzyme. So what is the benefit of combustion and respiration? In combustion, the energy is released and that is released vigorously. It's not a slow and gradual process. Whereas in respiration, oxidation is occurred in controlled condition, step by step, gradual process. That's why ATP can be formed. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
So next question is, what is the comparison between photosynthesis and respiration? Yes,
Ma'am.
Rupa, you want to ask something?
मैम रेस्पिरेशन में हम ये पॉइंट भी तो ऐड कर सकते हैं ना कि देयर इज ब्रेकडाउन ऑफ ग्लूकोज.
Can we? हमने पढ़ा है that respiratory substrate can be other than glucose, Rutu. Isn't it? So why to mention that? Whenever difference is asked, see, there can be 1,000 difference. You can say in respiration there is glycolysis, in burning there is no glycolysis. ऐसे तो हम 100 difference निकाल सकते हैं, but we should talk about the main things, isn't it? So what is the difference between photosynthesis and respiration, and what is the similarity between them? You tell me.
Ma'am, in photosynthesis,
Yes, beta.
ma'am, in photosynthesis there is requirement of CO2, whereas for respiration there is requirement of oxygen.
Very good. First
Photosynthesis
difference, you should say that one is catabolic, another one is anabolic. Respiration is an anabolic process, whereas photosynthesis is a catabolic process. Understood? Then you can talk about that
Ma'am.
photosynthesis. There is
मैम
release of-
उल्टा नहीं हुआ.
रेस्पिरेशन तो एम्फीबॉलिक प्रोसेस नहीं आएगा.
Sorry. I made a mistake. It is photosynthesis is anabolic because there will be production of constructive reaction. It is there will be simple compounds joined to form complex one, and respiration is a catabolic one. Sorry. So next point is in you can talk in next point that in photosynthesis CO2 H2O and is released and food is produced. In respiration ATP and CO2 is released. That is true. What about other ones? Photosynthesis is
Ma'am.
another. Yes, beta. Follow.
मैम मैं ये बोल रही हूँ कि रेस्पिरेशन एम्फीबॉलिक प्रोसेस नहीं आएगी.
रेस्पिरेशन एम्फीबॉलिक प्रोसेस आएगी, बट अल्टीमेटली उसमें जो प्रोसेस होता है वो दैट इज अल्टीमेट. इफ यू लुक इनटू द फाइनल रिएक्शन ऑफ रेस्पिरेशन, then you can call it anabolic only, not catabolic only, not amphibolic. Why? वैसे तो photosynthesis में भी there are reactions where something is breaking down. We don't consider them, no, beta, individually. We are looking into the overall process, isn't it? When you write down the equation of photosynthesis, you write that CO2 and H2 combines to form C6H12O6. And when we write about the respiration, we talk about that breaking down of C6H12O6 into something. That's a very relevant question, Rutu. You can definitely ask this question. कि मैम हम अगर स्टेप्स को काउंट करें, बट whenever we are talking about the process, जैसे आपने कौन से दिन कितनी पढ़ाई की है, that is not important. आपकी टेस्ट में कितना अच्छा रिजल्ट आ रहा है, that is important. That is what by which you are going to get evaluated. Same is here, the end products and the beginning products only consider, because those steps are micro steps. Is it clear, beta?
ओके मैम.
So what are the other things? Photosynthesis requires sunlight, respiration doesn't. Photosynthesis occur in only green plants or chlorophyllated organisms. Respiration occur to everyone. Photosynthesis
Ma'am.
is, yes, beta.
When photosynthesis takes place in chloroplast and respiration takes place in mitochondria.
Yes, very good. although there are exceptions. In respiration, it can occur without mitochondria in aerobic one. The most important thing is plants can survive for some time without photosynthesis, depending on their storage food. But no organism can survive for a minute without respiration. What do you think? Am I correct?
मैम
हाँ.
मैम बट हमारी बॉडी में तो आपने जैसे बोला था कि कार्बोहाइड्रेट फैट और लिपिड है, तो अगर एनर्जी नहीं मिलेगी रेस्पिरेशन से तो वो सारे लेयर्स बर्न होकर एनर्जी नहीं जनरेट करेंगे।
बर्न कैसे प्रोसेस से होंगे आयुषी? जला दोगे उनको मैच बॉक्स से?
नहीं नहीं,
तो कैसे बर्न होंगे?
हाँ दे रिक्वायर एटीपी।
They will go for respiration only, no?
यस मैम।
So very irrelevant.
Oxidation.
Sorry to say. हम भूल ही गए कि फैट और लिपिड जैसे ultimately the respiration is the method by which we get energy, no? So then what is the similarity in both of them?
मैम बोथ ऑफ देम आर रिडॉक्स रिएक्शन।
We can say definitely
दोनों से एनर्जी मिलती है।
रेस्पिरेशन से तो मिलती है, फोटोसिंथेसिस से कहाँ एनर्जी मिलती?
हाँ नहीं मिलेगी।
Both are having chemiosmotic hypothesis, isn't it?
यस मैम।
Okay, so फोटोसिंथेसिस से भी एनर्जी एक्चुअली मिलती है, बट हम उसको बोलेंगे नहीं क्योंकि दैट एनर्जी इज यूटिलाइज्ड इन फोटोसिंथेसिस इटसेल्फ, so we will not mention about that. Okay, so we have to talk about the respiratory system in different types of animal, and we will start talking with different types of animal. I'll write their names. You kindly talk about each one of them. First is protozoa. How they respire? What is the mode of respiration in protozoa? Single cellular eukaryotic organism. How they respire?
Cutaneous.
How they go for exchange of gases? What is their
डिफ्यूजन।
Diffusion.
So they
Fusion.
see diffusion we cannot say here. Why?
सिंपल डिफ्यूजन।
We also do gaseous exchange via diffusion only, isn't it? Yes or no? हमारे
Yes.
भी alveoli में diffusion ही होता है ना? So they are mode of thing is plasma membrane diffusion. So they diffuse via plasma membrane. So that is the part through which they go for diffusion. Next is porifera. How they do it? For them also it is plasma membrane. Okay. Then we will talk about Nidiria. How they do it? Guys, they do it via body surface. They are multicellular organism. Outer cell take the oxygen and then oxygen slowly diffuse to the inner cell. What about platyhelminthes? That is flat-arm worm. How they do it? If it is a free living organism, in case of platyhelminthes, they do it by body surface. And if it is a what I can say parasite, then there will be no exchange of gases required. Okay. Fifth one is annelids.
मैम
हाँ बोलो बेटा.
मैम तो ये जो प्लेटी एलिमेंट्स है उनमें तो ऑर्गन लेवल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होता है, तो उनमें कोई ऑर्गन नहीं होगा?
They have organ level organization, but their this respiratory system is not that much well developed. So that is why they actually don't go for this. And जो parasites होते हैं जैसे टीनिया and all, they are like totally anaerobic. They don't have aerobic respiration. Same is for nemathelminthes, that is nematoda. Understood? So annelids
Yes,
do
ma'am.
it by skin. Then arthropods are having, arthropods are like the first one which is having diversity in respiratory system. In this case, you can find gill,
Tracheal system.
gill is there. In some cases, gill is
Lungs.
there. Like prawn,
Breathing
crayfish
gland.
have gill. They have trachea, which is present generally in
Cockroach.
okay. Tracheal system is there. Then there is book lung. Book lung is
Green
present in
gland.
case of कौन?
मैम एक और ग्रीन ग्लैंड भी आएगा ना?
नहीं, that is तो excretory system.
Excretion.
खिचड़ी नहीं पकाए ना. So book lung is present in case of spiders and scorpions. Okay, and book gills are also there. Book gills present in king crab. So I mentioned the name. I request all of you to note them down. So we will know about the next one, that is mollusk. In case of mollusk, we have Ctenidia. Ctenidia is like a special type of gill-like structure which is specially present in case of. So C is silent over here for Ctenidia. Okay. C is silent for Ctenidia, and this is the respiratory system. In case of Echinodermata is actually a mystery of animal kingdom, because it is the last one in non-chordate, and it has so many things which are very improved, but it is not having so many things which is should be there in such improved organism. So they generally respire via dermal branchiae, which is present in their skin, or they do it via tube feet. Tube feet is helpful for them to move. Same. And if I'm talking about chordata now, in case of hemichordata, hemichordata is doing it by pharyngeal wall. In case of chordata, there is further various diversity. I am not going into details. So urochordata and cephalochordata also go for pharyngeal wall. And in case of fishes, and they use gills. In amphibian, as I said, they generally use skin, bucopharyngeal lining, lungs, and some of them can use gills also. And all the terrestrial organisms like reptiles, birds, and human beings are using lungs for their respiration. So after having a review or preview of all types of respiratory system present in different organisms, we will go for description of respiratory system of human. So as this is a revision class and this chapter is already taught to you, I want you people to participate more in discussion. So sit with be ready that whenever I am asking you any question, all of you should be ready to give me the answer. And accordingly, we can discuss and talk about the respiratory system of human. Thank you. So this is an image of respiratory system of human. I will talk about each and every part and I will ask you people also questions so that it can be revision, nice revision. So if you see this extra part of respiratory system is only there so that oxygen can reach to the blood. Okay, the main gaseous exchange start in the wall of alveoli and in between the blood vessels. So all these parts which I outlined are responsible for making the oxygen available to that part where gases exchange possible, and after exchange carbon dioxide should be thrown outside by using this part. So we will start from here, which is the nasal cavity. At the beginning of nasal cavity, there are external layers. We call them nostril, and which is connected to a small passage which is called nasal chamber. Now we have two external layers or nostrils. As you can see, these are nostrils. In between these two, there is a nasal septum. Okay, so in every nasal passage, there are certain position things which is there. So we will, I will write down the parts. First is nostril, and then there is nasal passage. Okay, so when I am talking about nasal passage or nasal chambers, we need to talk about the septum. First, what do we mean by septum? It is separating the two nasal chambers. Now, each of these chamber can be further subdivided into three parts. One is vestibular region. So what do we mean by this vestibular region? It is the region which is coming just below your nostril, and it is a very short place which is lined by the skin, and it is having some amount of oil and sweat gland and have the hairs also. So this hair and oil and sweat is responsible to trap the dust and dirt particle going inside our um, um, respiratory system. It should be stopped somewhere before it can reach to the vital part. So second part is the part which is called respiratory region.
आपने सेप्टम क्या कहा?
सेप्टम ये जो बीच में वॉल रहता है विच इज लाइक सेपरेटिंग टू पार्ट्स ना बेटा.
Okay, ma'am.
So the respiratory region is the middle part, and most probably it is the most efficient part because it is lined by the respiratory epithelium. So what is this respiratory epithelium? It is actually ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium, and this is also rich in glands and cells. So these, what are the glands present over there? Mucus glands are there, sebaceous glands are there, which is like producing mucus and sebum. It is having high vasculation, that means it is full of blood vessels, and that's why the color of this is what I can say, is pinkish in color, and this is acting as a air condition, or it is acting as the filtering unit. This part is also responsible for filtering of the air that is going inside. And third part that is present in nasal chamber is the olfactory region. Can anyone tell me what it is? What do we mean by olfactory region?
Ma'am, it helps us to sense the smell.
Smell. Very good. It is lined by olfactory epithelium, and it is present at the upper part of the nasal chamber. That means if I see that this is the nostril, this is the chamber which is continuing, it is present over here, upper part, and it is having nasal it is yellowish brown in color, and it is helpful for us to detect the smell. Why should we detect smell? Guys, हम क्यों olfactory? हाँ बोलो.
Ma'am, just to know that the thing is bad or good in any sense.
See, you must have noted one thing. The moment you are getting a very pungent or bad smell, first thing is you just close your nose, which is required, because that may cause entry of something bad into your respiratory system, and it may affect the respiratory system. Okay, so olfactory region is not only for the purpose of, because we should know it is good or bad, it is helpful for protecting us like all other sense organs too. Is it clear, beta? So now we wish to talk about nasal conchi. So what do we mean by nasal conchi? We already talked about auditory conchi, which is present in as auditory bones, or that is Malleus incus stapes. But in nasal part, nasal chamber, if you look into closely into the inside part of nasal chamber, three shallow, very shallow, they are not very deep ridges, but these are bony ridges which are present in the nasal chamber, and we call them nasal concha. And these are individually named as superior nasal conchi, middle nasal conchi, and inferior nasal conchi. Okay, and they are fully covered by mucous membrane. But why do you think we require these nasal conchis? What are their role? क्यों चाहिए भाई? Guys, because it increase the surface area, more will be the surface area, more will be the entrapment of dust and dirt particles. Because the main function of nasal passage is to trap the dust, dirt particle and olfactory region to detect the smell. Am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So we will talk about another part that is also associated with this nasal passage, and that is known as paranasal sinus. So many a time we say that के sinus में pain हो रहा है. Have you heard this sinus wali pain? So
Yes,
these
ma'am.
paranasal sinus are cavities, and they are present near the frontal lobe, near the maxillary region, and ethmoid and sphenoid bone of our skull. And they are full of goblet cells, and you know that goblet cells are responsible to produce what they produce. That's why it maintains a specific amount of humidity inside the the nasal chamber. So after this nasal passage or nasal chamber, the third part is there are internal layers. So the way nostrils are called external nares, the internal nares are known as guanine. So they are simply pore which is opening into nasopharynx. So if you see in our nose, external layers or nostril and then passage, and then they are having an inner pore which is the internal layers or guanine, and finally they will be opening into the pharynx. So this is the structure of the respiratory system of human up to the internal layers. अभी भी हम gaseous exchange के जगह पे we are not able to reach. So we will look into the next part of our respiratory system, that is called pharynx. One moment. So what do we mean by pharynx? What do you know about pharynx? You tell me.
A common passage for air.
So what are the parts of
Air and food.
So what are the parts of pharynx? I told you the part which is near the internal layers are nasopharynx, pouch,
Laryngopharynx.
Pharynx.
Nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx, and this chamber will finally end up into two pipes. One is the trachea or windpipe, and other is the esophagus or food pipe. And pharynx is generally lined by stratified squamous epithelium, and that's why as pharynx is having connection with both mouth as well as nose. That's why some amount of air we inhale via mouth also, and that is the alternate route of air. If the nasal chamber is blocked, we generally inhale via mouth. That's why we feel uncomfortable also if by cough and cold our nasal chambers are blocked. Okay, so next important part is the larynx, and larynx is already also known as voice box. Okay, so larynx is known as voice box. In case of male, it is quite prominent, and that's why it is often called Adam's apple. It is prominent in male because the vocal cord are thick and the structure is protruded from here, and that's why it's called Adam's apple, not Eve's apple. Okay, so now I wish to talk about glottis and epiglottis because we discussed this. What is it? You people will tell me.
Ma'am, it is the flap which prevent the entry of
Eat
food into
matlab kaun? Glottis or epiglottis?
Ma'am, epiglottis is the covering of glottis. And glottis is the covering of larynx.
So it ensures what?
It
Ma'am,
ensures
कि food जाना नहीं चाहिए. It prevents the entry of food in the voice box.
That's why it is always suggested that we should not talk very much while we actually are eating any kind of food. Okay, and also as it is a part of respiratory tract, it actually go for as a voice box also, which help us to speak, and it has vocal cord, but the main larynx is made up of ciliated epithelium, and there is something called laryngeal spasm. Actually, if any kind of substance like food or something particle is entering into larynx, there will be a by reflex action we cough, and that is called laryngeal spasm. And why we cough? Because anything is going inside the larynx may cause damage to that part, and we may lose our voice. That's why it has to wriggle get out, and that's why we naturally cough. So after larynx, but before I go there, I wish you people to have a look into the diagram and look into different parts of it, so that up to larynx you know different parts. So we will talk about the next part. After larynx, the next part that is present is the trachea. So trachea is also known as windpipe, and it is a very thin walled tube and approximately 11 centimeter long and 2.5 centimeter wide. And this is moving downward direction to the lungs. So it is the connection between the pharynx and the lungs. Okay, so if you look into the structure of trachea after coming out of the pharynx, it will run through the length of neck, and then it divides into two parts. Okay, now the moment at the middle part of thorax, it is dividing into two tubes, that is called primary bronchi or major bronchi. So this is my trachea, but the moment it is divided into two, we will call it bronchi. So this bronchi is the primary one, and bronchi is plural, bronchus is singular. Okay. Now the right primary bronchus, the part which is right, it will divide further into three lobar or secondary bronchi. Okay, and why three? Because these three lobes will then pass to the, what I can say, right lungs, and then the left primary bronchi, the left primary bronchi will be divided into two secondary bronchi, and it will enter into left lung. Why there is a partiality? In right there are three, in left there are two. Any idea?
Ma'am, in right one there is a mediastinum where heart locates.
Okay. So that's why the left one is slightly smaller than the right one. If you see the part of lungs, okay, here as the heart is present, I wish to point it out. That's why it is having smaller size than the right one. Okay. Now there will be further division. So I'll just write down the division. Trachea will form primary bronchi. Then primary bronchi will be getting subdivided into secondary bronchi. Which will further subdivided into what I can call tertiary bronchioles. So bronchioles are smaller subunits of bronchus. Now, after tertiary bronchioles, they further subdivided into very, very small bronchioles. Okay. Actually, they are further subdivided into terminal or respiratory bronchioles. अभी ये तो जायती हो गई, सभी ब्रोंकस जो है या ब्रोंक्यूल्स जो है, they are participating in respiration only. Then why we call only terminal bronchioles as respiratory bronchioles? Because they are responsible to produce the alveoli. Finally, the respiratory bronchioles will have a dead end and they will have a balloon-like structure which is called alveoli. And this whole thing is going to form a bronchial tree. So if we talk about the trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, what they are made up of? They are made up of pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium, and this pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium is having mucus secreting substance. Why? That's why whenever anytime we are coughing, we are having irritation, the cough is having lots of substance, and that lots of substance is nothing but the mostly mucus. And whenever we are having cough and cold, the part we are emitting is the dead cells as well as the mucus. So apart from this, I must say that all these linings are having muscle also, which will control the flexibility. Why the bronchial part should have mucus so much? Why they require mucus, beta?
So, ma'am, any type of bacteria or microbe cannot enter the lungs.
They can enter, but they will be trapped by it, isn't it? So
Yes.
alveoli doesn't have cilia. The moment the respiratory bronchioles form the alveoli, they are made up of cuboidal epithelium but non-ciliated. Why? What will happen if alveoli is also having ciliated epithelium? Class? Because that will cause hindrance in surface area of alveoli. Alveoli should have a very thin wall so that oxygen can be diffused to blood and CO2 can diffuse in. That's why we cannot afford cilia over there. Then why we have cilia in all these lining? To trap the microbes. Next question thing I wish to say, if you look into trachea and primary bronchioles, they have C-shaped cartilaginous rings present in them. Why they have this C-shaped cartilaginous ring?
Ma'am, to provide flexibility.
No, not to provide flexibility. Without C-shaped cartilaginous rings, they can be more flexible, no? Which one is more flexible, a balloon or a kite? If you want to bend it or give it a shape.
Balloon.
Because it doesn't have any skeleton, no? So then why trachea have them? Because
मैम बट अगर
हाँ बोलो
मैम अगर सिर्फ बोन होगा तो जब एयर निकल जाएगी या आएगी और वो प्रेशर एक्सर्ट करेगी तो उसमें प्रॉब्लम कॉज कर सकता है, बट अगर
नहीं।
ट्रैकिया होगा
ट्रैकिया में बोन होता है, that is cartilaginous, not the solid bone. See, it may happen that for a fraction of second I am not able to inhale air. At that time, the trachea should not collapse. To maintain the shape of trachea, to make it the walls of trachea apart from each other, it is required to have the like what I can say, this covering present in it. Understood? Is it clear?
yes मैम.
And whole trachea is having and bronchioles are having autonomous nervous system control smooth muscle, and that will as per our metabolic need, it will control the inhalation and exhalation of air. Although this is going to control the diameter or availability of air to suffice the need of the oxygen. And you must be knowing that the lungs is not separated. Lungs is actually covered by pleura, and pleura is having two layers. One is the visceral pleura, which is present inside, and the outer is called parietal pleura. And it is very much required because such a vital part of our body should be what I can say, it should be very much well secured. That's why pleura is held to thoracic wall, that is the wall of the chest, as well as diaphragm. And there is a liquid also which is present in the pleural cavity, which is the gap between the two pleura. And it's a very small space. If you try to look at it, you will feel nothing is there, but the thin layer of pleural fluid, which is the watery fluid present over there, and this is lubricating pleura, so that the two layers can slide over each other and there should not be any friction, because any kind of friction, see, lungs is a part which is always contracting and expanding. So pleura also has to be having that flexibility. So that is that flexibility, and to prevent the friction, the pleural fluid is there. And the pleural cavity is airtight, and pleura is required for this purpose also. See, you know that whenever there should be gaseous exchange, this exchange should be in a way that the difference of partial pressure should be maintained. That means inside lungs, inside blood vessel. So the cavity which is present outside lungs should have a balanced pressure, which is 3 to 4 millimeter of mercury, and it is maintained by the pleura. It ensures that whatever may be the situation, the this cavity inside which the lungs is locating, which is protected by pleura, should have a stable wall. Okay, and it should maintain the what I can say, pressure. That's why, you know, if anyone is stabbed with a knife, what happens? The atmospheric air will rush into the lungs, और जिसकी वजह से क्या होगा? Lungs will collapse. Okay, and this condition is called pneumothorax. इसमें क्या होगा? हमारी, if we have that puncture, we will not be able to breathe, although the knife is not touching the lungs. It will be causing damage to the lungs. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So we will learn up to this time only. We will continue our discussion in our next lecture. Till that time, bye.